Yeah!
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Fringe. Boy, is it a good day for politics, and one that I've been waiting for quite some time. I've often been very critical of Pierre Poilievre in the past, even though I've said multiple times he is going to retain my vote when it comes time for the next federal election. However, I want to talk today about one of the key issues that I said he's been silent on, and one that I think is great. Now, people have always said, hey, Derek, listen, Pierre doesn't want to put his whole campaign out there. He doesn't want everybody knowing what his promises are going to be, what he plans to do. Well, we already know a lot of his campaign hurdles that he wants to cross, whether it's axing the tax, building the homes, stopping the crime. You guys know the usual spiel. But one place where I've said that Pierre's a little absent when it comes to this forthright coming in Canada is immigration. And one thing I want to touch on right now is an article that shows Canada's records decrease in foreign students following introduction of stricter visa rules. This is something that's being pushed for a long time. If you follow what's going on in New Brunswick, in the Maritimes, you'll see that there is an uprising of temporary foreign students saying they should be given Canadian citizenship because they've been paying rent or they've bought property in Canada, and that gives them entitlement and rights to Canadian citizenship. I've shown videos on this channel showing just how a lot of organizations actually encourage people to come from places such as India to, I guess, take advantage of Canada's very relaxed system, we'll say, in terms of immigration by starting out as a temporary student and then ultimately becoming a landed immigrant to Canada. And again, that's causing mass problems when it comes to availability of homes, availability of jobs. We've taken on more people than we can afford to, regardless of people's views on religious beliefs, demonstrations, protests. We're not getting into any of that today because this is about numbers. And it's one thing that I've always said is a very important factor when getting into Canada's future. It says here that the number of study permit holders in Canada decreased by 24,500 during January and March of 2024, compared with a decrease of 16,000 during the same months in 2023, Statistics Canada revealed. Such a drop in the number of international students follows stricter study visa regulations introduced by Canada in January of 2024. Now, again, we heard when that was announced, and I said the same thing as everybody else. Yeah, right. Like, it's not going to do anything. And even though this is a decrease in 24,000, that doesn't necessarily fix the problem. The problem is what we do with those that are here, that are protesting, saying they have rights to citizenship. In January of 2024, the Canadian government announced caps on the number of approved study permits, aiming to reduce the figure of 360,000 to 35% less than 2023. Of course, during the first quarter of 2024, Canada added 131,000 temporary students, marking one of the slightest quarterly net increases since 2022. We've constantly seen this overflow of students coming to Canada, again, under the guise that this is how you get in, this is how you get under the radar, this is the fast track to becoming a Canadian citizen. During the period, the highest number of study permits were granted to students from India, China, Philippines, Nigeria, France, Iran, Nepal, Vietnam, and Mexico. However, Canada may enforce additional restrictions if needed. The Canadian Minister of Immigration, Mark Miller, warned in an official statement on April 22nd. Post-secondary institutions have a critical responsibility when recruiting students abroad, as well as supporting them here. We've taken some important steps to strengthen the international student visa system and will not hesitate to do more if need be. Again, a lot of this, and you're going to see things like this from the Liberal government, merely to try to appeal to Canadian citizens that, hey, we haven't completely lost our touch. We're not completely out of touch when it comes to the issues going on. And that again goes back to why people say Pierre Poilievre does not want to reveal his entire campaign strategy, because the Liberals will simply try to brand it out as much as can be. Now, whether or not we're going to get to Pierre's statement, whether or not his statement holds any water or would give the Liberals any kind of plans to rebrand Pierre's proposals, it's too little too late coming from a Liberal government. Says overall, the population in Canada reached 41 million in the first quarter, making a 0.6% increase According to StatCan, without temporary immigrants, the country's population growth rate during the period would have been 0.3. So again, half a percentage point was due to immigration. As further reported by Bloomberg, Canada saw an increase in its population due to an influx of foreigners who arrived in the country after the pandemic. The majority of this increase is attributed to temporary immigrants, including international students, foreign workers, and asylum seekers. Now, I've touched on the asylum seekers multiple times on this channel. The hundreds of millions of dollars that are being spent in order to house them in hotel rooms, waiting for a court date, giving them money, food, all the things they need in order to survive in Canada. Essentially, they get to stay here for months at a time. My guess as well is that they're granted temporary citizenship and allowed to stay, but that's about to change. If we look at the polls, Pierre Poilievre is still in a considerable lead for a majority government coming up in the next election, if we are to believe those polls. And I want to go to this article from the Western Standard. Pierre Poilievre says he will reduce immigration if elected as prime minister. And again, this is what I've been waiting for. This is what I think all of us have been waiting for, that keep an eye on this subject, is for Pierre to actually take a stance and say more than what he has typically said, that he's going to build homes to adjust for the numbers that are coming in, that it's only going to be a build by how many come into the country level. Well, now he's made a very clear statement as to where he stands. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre said that his government would lower immigration numbers, especially for temporary immigrants. Pierre Poilievre said it is impossible to invite 1.2 million new people to Canada each year. When we're building 200,000 homes, it's impossible, said Poilievre in a Thursday interview on TVA Nouvelle. There is no room. He couldn't be more correct. We've been saying it for months. Now, again, call it what you want to, but it's nice that, again, as summer breaks out, and I'd mentioned this before, we were going to see this come the summer season, that politicians are essentially on the campaign trail, even though we're over a year away from our federal election. They're taking the summer to try and appeal to voters. We're going to see multiple statements coming out from all parties throughout the summer, as well as discussions about things like compromised MPs, Chinese interference, and the big hot button issue between taxes and affordability, which is immigration. Now, a good friend of the channel from Rebel News, Alexa Lavoie, tweeting out, Pierre Poilievre says under a conservative government, immigration will be much lower, especially for temporary immigration. He says it's impossible to bring 1.2 billion people into the country per year while only building 200,000 homes. I'm going to play the clip for you guys. It is in French, but take note to, if you can see the subtitles, you can't see the subtitles. I'll keep it down here, but the subtitles, well, try to read them as much as you can. Here we go.
Poilievre s'engagerait à des chiffres au moins là-dessus.
Oh, ça va être beaucoup plus bas, surtout pour les.
For anybody who's missing it, I'll put it in full, and I'll read the subtitles. They asked about immigration. He says, "Oh, it's going to be much lower, especially for temporary immigration."
Temporaire, c'est impossible d'inviter 1,2 million de personnes, nouvelles personnes au Canada chaque année lorsqu'on bâtit 200 000 logements. C'est impossible. Il n'y a pas de place. Le Québec est au point de rupture.
So he basically gave the same quote that we're seeing there from Alexa Lavoie, saying it's impossible to bring 1.2 million people while only building 200,000 homes. But he also finishes by saying Quebec especially is at a breaking point. Now, what's he referring to in Quebec? Well, again, the asylum seekers coming over from places like Roxham Road that are being housed in hotels, that are being put up on the government. I shouldn't even say the government's dime, the taxpayers' dime, to the tune of over $100 million plus in order just to look after them until they get their day in court. It's refreshing to see Pierre sitting with his wife talking about this finally and taking a firm stance, because now it's actually coming out of the horse's mouth. It's not just word salad. It's not, beating around the bush or saying, hey, we're going to adjust the home building to match the people coming in. He has acknowledged, look, this many people coming into the country, it's impossible to build houses. It's impossible to catch up to those kind of numbers. It's not going to be possible. So we're going to have to turn off the taps. We're going to have to shut it down. And we're going to have to put a stopper on things and say, we got to handle Canada's problems first. Let me know what you guys think down below. Do you agree with Pierre Poilievre? Is it nice to finally hear him taking an official stance on this word for word or verbatim as to what people have been requesting? I know I'm excited to see his immigration plan when it actually gets announced now that he's made this statement. I'm interested to see what's going to happen when it comes to whether or not we're going to ask people to leave. If we're not going to entertain this protest for permanent residency in Canada or what they call temporary rights for people coming to the country. Again, I feel that you came here on the premise that you're labeled temporary. You should be understanding when it's time that they tell you to go home. It would happen in any other country of the world. It doesn't make us horrible people. Let me know your thoughts down below if it's your first time here. I hope this video has earned your subscription. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, click the bell for notifications. Join us live here on the channel each and every Friday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central for Friday Night Fringe, where we go over all the things that happened in this world of politics and everything we know that's coming ahead. Now, speaking of coming ahead, of course, MPs are out for the summer. It is getting a little slower, which may be a reduction in content or things to talk about. If there's anything you want me to talk about or put in video form that you're interested in hearing about or getting my views on, make sure to leave those down in the comments, because summertime, well, everybody's out on vacation watching the world burn on 10-hour car rides without bathroom breaks. So, of course, content ideas need to come forward. So if there's anything you guys want to see, anything you're interested in, let me know in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.